Hi, I'm Bob Marsenich with Glacier HR Services, and we do all kinds of training in organizations, and we primarily work with supervisors to teach them how to treat their supervision as a career and to make a career out of their supervision. Today, I want to talk about empathy and accountability, and this is one of the topics that we go into in our training and we talk with supervisors a lot on. Best supervisors I've ever worked with are supervisors who have a certain amount of accountability, a certain amount of sternness, and a certain amount of empathy, where they're willing to give people some grace and a little bit of leeway and some time off and all of that. But probably more important, they know when to use each and they know how much of each to use. But on the other hand, if you're not interviewing supervisors to find out if they have these skills or not, and if they know how to work with people in these kinds of situations, then you're not going to get quality supervision, which means your supervisors, like Gallup says, they have about control over 70% of your engagement with employees. You're not going to get the productivity you need out of people. And I'm big on behavioral interviewing, that you interview for past performance. You ask people about how they handled situations in the past. And the reason you do that is because past performance is the best predictor of future performance. So ask yourself, as we go through this, do I ask supervisors when I'm interviewing them, do I ask them these kinds of things? So a good question to ask a supervisor is, tell me about a time in the past when you've had an employee who was extremely emotional or was going through some personal hardship and it was really difficult. How did you work with them? How did you respond to that? And what was the outcome of it? And see what this supervisor says, or this interviewee, see what they say. Do they say, oh yeah, here's what I did, I sat down and I talked with them and it took a while and I worked with them and it was emotional and I had to give them a little bit of time off, but I let them know that they still had to do the job, and as time went on I had to hold them accountable and things worked out or they didn't work out or whatever. But the key is, whether they worked out or not, how did the supervisor manage that situation? Ask, have you ever dealt with an individual who had personal problems and it was affecting their performance? How did you manage that? Ask the supervisor or the person you're interviewing, tell me about your views on these kinds of things. What's your philosophy? How do you manage these kinds of situations? How do you think about people that are having difficulties? And see if they're too stern, or are they too empathetical? Do they let people get away with too much? Are they literally afraid of emotions? Because I can tell you, this career of supervision and being effective at it, you better not be afraid of emotions. Ask about if you've ever seen a situation where an employee was attacking you, and ask the individual that you're interviewing, tell me about a time, if you've ever experienced, where someone was attacking you. They were getting too aggressive. They were getting too over the top. How did you handle that situation? How did you respond? Did you say, whoa, hold it, stop? Did you say, hey, I can tell that this is really upsetting to you. Let's take a break. But let's come back in 5 minutes. Let's come back tomorrow morning. The key is that you circle back around and you don't let them manipulate you with that intensity of emotion. That's the key. Ask the interviewee, have you ever had a situation where you had someone crying or begging for their job? And how did you respond to that situation? A few years ago, I had that situation where we caught an individual stealing from the company, and we brought him in, and we had all of the data and background, and proof, and he broke down, and he admitted to the theft, but he also at the same time was begging for his job. He was pleading with us to please let him keep his job. My guess is most of us as human beings would go, geez, I feel awful about that. I lose some sleep over it. But the key is, you've got to get to a point fairly soon where you say, it wasn't my fault. These are the kinds of things that we talk about in the trainings that we do to get supervisors to be as effective as possible, because let's face it, they're oftentimes influencing 7 to 10 other people's performance, and if they're not effective, you've got a major performance problem. As a supervisor, you have to ask yourself, am I willing to deal with those kinds of tough situations, and I'm willing to take them on in a way that is healthy for me and healthy for the individual.